Hi, people. Just want to thank everyone who came to the live stream yesterday. I think it went well. Better days, just a call out to you. We've connected elsewhere on social media, so thanks for your support. Thanks for everyone's support. I've just watched a documentary on Netflix, which I want to give a bit of a review about and also talk about the issues around it. The name of the documentary is Jimmy Savile, a British horror story. Sorry if I sound like a bit of a little bit of a this because I bit my tongue yesterday, I think, and it's slightly painful. Yeah, Jimmy Savile, a British horror story. Now, if you're British, as a lot of my subscribers are, you'll know immediately who this refers to. But a very brief introduction to my international viewers. For years, for decades, Jimmy Savile was a well-known, very well-known DJ and television presenter. He presented Top of the Pops. He presented a show called Jim Will Fix It, which was basically about young people, children in many cases, getting their dream to come true. And he was famous in the UK for his charity work. He raised extensive amounts, I believe it was over 40 million, for charity. So he was one of our biggest celebrities in the 70s and 80s, but going well into the 90s and 2000s as well. He died in 2011. And initially, when he died, it was all praise. But then, over time, over a few years after that, extensive claims came out about what this man really was. Those claims did exist in his lifetime, but only really after he died did they really get much exposure. And the claims were that this man was a prolific sexual predator. Basically, he conned the nation. So that's just a little intro to my international viewers. To British viewers, you won't need an introduction. So the docu series, it was two episodes. They're about an hour and a half each. Was directed by Rowan Deacon, and it has interviews of people like Lynn Barber, who's a journalist, Ian Hislop of Private Eye, Mark Lawson, television critic, Martin Young, television reporter, Marion Jones, who was one of the investigative journalists who helped to expose Savile's crimes, Roger Ordish, who was a BBC producer of Dim Will Fix It, Dominic Harmon, a journalist who's the son of a famous QC, Robin Butler, the civil servant and private secretary to Margaret Thatcher, Alison Bellamy, journalist and Savile's biographer, Selena Scott, television journalist, Marjorie Wallace, investigative journalist and founder of the charity Sane, Karine Main, forensic psychotherapist, and Andrew Neil, who's a well-known editor, journalist, television interviewer, also with victims of Savile. And basically, this looks at his rise to success, celebrity success. It looks at his work on television. It looks at his eccentric personality. He was never without a cigar, without his bling tracksuits. He crafted this real image on British television. And, I remember as a child, sort of thinking of Savile, and at that time I didn't really think in terms of predatory, but I always thought he was a bit of a, I don't know, there's something just about him that seemed a bit strange, like he was out of place or something. And as a child, I couldn't really put two and two together, but looking back, I think the most shocking thing about this is how this man conned the nation. And it's actually rather disgusting when you think about it, because any other predator would be arrested and serve their time. Um, the number of powerful people who were taken in by this guy or knowingly enabled him is abhorrent. Now, I was looking at reviews of this, and some people were saying that the program kind of glorified Savile and served as an apology for him. I don't know what they're talking about. I got the exact other impression. I thought what it done was effectively showed how he got the success, how he conned the nation with his maneuverings, with his deception, with his behavior. Um, and I think there were a lot of factors. So I don't agree with that at all. I don't think the series in any way um, glorified Savile. I found it quite disturbing, in fact. I think it was effective in showing what an evil man he was in terms of his deception. Um, so I just think that's an unfair criticism. I've given it a positive review because I think it was good at what it done. I didn't give it 5 stars because I think the subject material it's not enjoyable. But in terms of what it done, I think it was very effective. Um, there are a lot of people though that perhaps if I have any criticism of this series, I think those people should have been put on the spot a bit more. People like Roger Ordish, who was the producer of Jim Will Fix It. Now, for these people to claim they knew nothing, um, they're either lying or they were astonishingly naive. And, Savile will never face justice unless your spirit telling you believe there's a hell. The feelings about this man were so strong that initially he got recently I was watching a lot of stuff to do with Elvis Presley, and when Elvis died in Memphis, he had 17 Cadillacs. It wasn't actually dissimilar when Savile died in Leeds. He had this entourage, and he had this celebrity. It really wasn't that dissimilar. He met Elvis, in fact. I didn't realize that, but he met a lot of people. And Elvis himself, incidentally, had a few skeletons. But the big takeaway not just from this documentary, I felt this way before as well, is that absolutely nobody should be above scrutiny. And this idea that if someone is kind of the media's darling and they do a lot of charity work, they should therefore be protected is obscene. Um, and looking back at footage now, people say, how the hell could the nation have been taken in by this man? I'm going to check out my channel and see if I made a video about it at the time. Actually, I began my channel in 2012, so I wouldn't have made a video when he died. But it's sickening that he was enabled for so long. But the feelings were so high when these revelations started coming out. Initially, people were saying the victims were trying to get attention, he can't defend himself, and so on. But when people start realizing the extent of this, the feelings were such that his headstone had to be taken down. Anything bearing his name had to be taken down because it would have been vandalized. Very, very strong feelings. But when you look at the footage, and there's some of it around YouTube, of the brazen way that he was basically, he was so confident that he was basically admitting the things that he was doing. He used to always come out with this sleazy joke about, I'm not allowed in any girls' school in Britain. Um, and that was the arrogance of I don't think he even deserves to be called a man. The arrogance of this predator that he would basically, it's almost like this perverse idea that he wanted to get caught because he would basically announce what he was doing. There was a famous interview with Louis Theroux, the well-known journalist, and Savile said that I always say I hate children because that makes the press go away from these claims of being a predator. Obviously, if you hate children, you're not going to be attracted to them. That was his logic. But when you consider that his victims weren't just vulnerable teenage girls, they were incapacitated inmates at Broadmoor, which is a famous psychiatric hospital in the UK. I really do think he was pure evil. Um, he was apparently religious, and he said that there'll be this, checkpoint when you're in heaven about all the good you've done versus all the bad you've done. Well, I don't think the charity work vindicates the extent of the abuse he was involved in. We're not talking about one or two victims, which would be bad enough. We're talking about a prolific predator. Um, and the 70s, sometimes people say it's woke to change things and to go, move with the times, but sometimes you could see why certain things do belong in the past. What was allowed in the 70s, it's kind of sinister today to look at some of that stuff. And to think this is basically a paedophile groping teenage girls on air being watched by millions of people, and no one done a damn thing about it. That's really messed up. So I feel the documentary was important. Some might say, why this time? Well, I think it just sends out a message that nobody should be above scrutiny. Now, of course, there's the other side of it, which is you can get people falsely accused and there's miscarriages of justice. Cliff Richard is a famous example of this, where, the rumours are flying and the BBC really treated that badly. And I think actually, paradoxically, it was their way of trying to go to the other side from the Savile scandal because they face heavy criticism for that, rightly so. So they went the other way of, okay, well, this celebrity is being accused, so let's, um, you know, basically vilify him. So it can go the other way. But I think the lesson is people making accusations need to be heard. And there should never be this culture whereby someone is above reproach. I don't give a damn who they are. They could be a war hero. They could be a beloved humanitarian. Nobody should be above reproach. Because just because someone does something good doesn't mean they can't have a dark side. And because they're doing good things, should they be above justice? I don't think so. Um, I really, really don't like idolatry when it comes to celebrities, and I think this is just a testament to why not. Um, I mean, for years, Savile was worshipped in this country. He was widely admired. So, I think of other famous celebrities, and I'm not saying it's the same thing. I'm not saying this at all. But Muhammad Ali, the famous boxer, doesn't need an introduction. He was pro-segregation. He had some fairly racist views. He was against mixed couples. But you try saying that on any boxing forum, you'll be shouted down. Princess Diana had her flaws. I think she could be a bit egotistical at times. Now, I'm not saying these people are in the same category as Savile. I'm just making the point that nobody is above reproach, and journalists should not be vilified for doing the job. Um, I recently read the book Elvis: The Last 24 Hours. I think it was called by Albert Goldman. Now, it was badly written, and I think a lot of it was conjecture. But he was vilified simply for writing it. Although his hypothesis and his conclusions were very flawed, he claimed that Elvis killed himself. But I don't like celebrity worship of anybody. Of anybody. I just think it's unhealthy, and I think it's people get into this almost cult-like mentality of marbleizing people and putting them on this pedestal. Um, this is not to say that people can't have false allegations against them, and there is two sides to every story. But I honestly think in the case of Savile, it was so extensive, and there's so much ground for it that even if some of the claims have been exaggerated, there was so much more to go on. And I do think respective police forces failed badly. I think the BBC failed badly. Worse than that, I think there were people in the organisation that knew. This idea that nobody knew anything, just hard to fathom. It's hard to fathom that I mean, we know that in the 70s there were rumours about Savile. At the very least, they should have considered those things. A few people did. Johnny Rotten of Sex Pistols fame was never taken in by Savile. Andrew Neil, in his interview, and this is why he's such a good journalist, I think he said that he felt there was something not quite right. And he pushed Savile a bit, so did Louis Theroux. So it's not absolutely everyone who was enabling him, but too many people did. And anyway, that should be the takeaway from this documentary. If you have Netflix, it's very interesting, but it's obviously uncomfortable to watch at points. And if you've ever been in that situation, I would just warn you, be cautious. If you've ever had experience with sexual abuse, you're a survivor, be wary because goes into the details of what the victims went through. A lot of it is about Savile's rise, but I don't think that's glorifying him. I think it's actually showing why he got away with it. Anyway, check it out. I think it's a good piece of investigative journalism. I think it's very revealing. And I think the lesson from this is nobody should be above scrutiny. And the police need to take victims seriously. I think West Yorkshire Police, of course, they investigated and found no wrongdoing, except yeah, they basically cleared themselves. That's disgraceful. The same force handled the Yorkshire Ripper case very badly. I think the police have a bad track record. I think too many forces have a track record of covering up their own incompetence, and it lets down victims. More recently, we've seen the scandal with these grooming gangs of British Pakistani men in places like Rotherham, Rochdale, Telford, um, and those were ignored because of this fear of being accused of racism. I mean, that's the Savile, as big as the Savile scandal. You know, it's on a similar scale, if not even bigger. Um, and again, it's this mentality of, well, the victims are troubled young women or they're X, Y, and Z. And it was Carter's. We don't want to be accused of racism, or it might stoke up racial tensions. This is why this idea of political correctness before public safety is so cowardly. And shame on those whose knee jerk attitude to something like that is, oh, but you can't say that, it's racist. Um, it's disgusting. Anyway, let me know your thoughts.